welcome a good friend and an advisor to Superworld as well. Jay, I'm very excited to have you here. Jay is a social impact entrepreneur, a builder of world-class teams, a humanitarian, an artist. And there's so much to unpack there. So excited to have you. Thanks so much for joining us.
So good to be here. Thank you very much. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, and maybe you can start by talking a bit about how you got here, your background, and kind of what took you on this journey. Because the thing I'm so impressed by, Jay, is that you are so passionate and involved in so many different areas that have such this strong impact. So there is a thread there that kind of brings all those things together, and love to hear kind of the background on that.
For sure. So I'm Canadian by background, born and raised in Montreal. I studied at McGill University in Montreal for 7 years straight. Actually, I did a philosophy degree and 2 law degrees. I met a really important mentor in the law school. His name is Erwin Kotler. He's an international human rights champion. He is well known for having represented Natan Sharansky in the former Soviet Union and for his anti-apartheid advocacy regarding the situation in South Africa back in the day. And he went on to become Canada's Attorney General and Minister of Justice. And in that regard, he freed more people who were wrongfully convicted in 1 year, more than any of the previous ministers combined. He enacted same-sex marriage legislation, which was very forward in those days, really was a leader in that regard. Did many other things that were inspirational to me, including transforming our Supreme Court into the most gender representative in the world and being the first man on the Women's Caucus. When he left Parliament, he asked me to be on the board of his newly founded international human rights organization called the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, and soon after asked me to chair it. And it's been a wonderful experience. It's been 10 years now. And it's taken me to all kinds of interesting places around the world, including Kiev in the middle of a war zone, presenting to the leadership draft statutes of regarding setting up tribunal to investigate crimes of aggression and our analysis of the Russian Federation's breaches of the Genocide Convention and the 10-point action plan. And that work is ongoing. We represent the women of Iran who've been in prison for not wanting to wear a headscarf. We do sanctions work, Uyghurs in China, political prisoners all around the world. One of which, Vladimir Kara-Murza, thankfully was freed in the Biden prisoner swap about a year or two ago. That's a big part of my volunteer work. As I alluded to earlier, I'm also very focused on advocating for women's rights and women in leadership, in particular in business. And so I've been doing a report every year in that regard called the Rosenzweig report. I recently released my 20th annual report in that regard with contributions from many well-known people from various walks of life. I bring in these influencers to amplify that discussion. My main business is in helping companies large and small design, build, and attract world-class teams. I've been doing that for decades. I helped build a business that was acquired by Korn Ferry, the largest recruiting firm in the world, stayed on there as a very young partner for a few years, but ultimately because I'm an entrepreneur and I felt I could serve my clients better, I broke away to start my own firm to really be an alternative to the big firms. And I've been lucky. The vision's been realized and it's been a very successful endeavor. I also, given my network and given the love I have for entrepreneurs, have been helping entrepreneurs to scale up their businesses in whatever capacity. Typically, the businesses are at the leading edge of technology. Given the network I'm so grateful to have and all the experience I've gained, I'm able to help them with things like fundraising or business development or team building. And it's gotten to the point now where I'm on the advisory board and have shares of dozens of businesses. I'm a venture partner in a few venture capital funds. I'm a board advisor of a private equity fund. And it's been a really fun endeavor. And we've had a number of exits. We're on the verge of some others. And I really enjoy that work. And by the way, as these businesses grow, it sometimes shifts into the recruiting space as founders need CEOs to take their businesses to new heights and CFOs pre-IPO, et cetera. So it's all very synergistic. I dabble a little bit in the film business, typically at the intersection of impact in film. I was an executive producer on Sean Penn's film Superpower, which was nominated for an Emmy. I was an associate producer on a sci-fi series called Razor. The lead female actress was nominated for an Emmy. So I really enjoyed that work. I'm also on the board of a significant film fund that invests in films that have impact, as well as Broadway shows. We're doing one on Maya Angelou, actually. I dabble a little bit in the music space. I'm currently writing a song with Grammy and Academy Award winning artist, which I'm really excited about, a song from Mother Earth to her children.
Nice.
And most importantly, wife and three kids. So that's a little bit of my journey, a little bit of the things I'm involved in. Didn't want to be too long-winded, so but happy to really lean in on any of that. And I just want to say that I'm proud to be on the advisory board of Superworld and really excited in terms of what you're going to be doing with it. And the future is extremely bright. Just feel privileged to be part of it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for all you do around the world. It's a real honor to have you on board and also to really hear some of the foundations of what are the things that you're passionate about, drive forward in these various initiatives. I'd love to kind of go into a little bit more detail on some of those. What do you think is, we're going through a very interesting time right now in the world, and some shifts are happening. We see this on the technology side with artificial intelligence. We're seeing this societally in general as well. What do you think of what's happening? Where are we in the world? Loved your kind of view on the areas that you touch. What are you seeing in those areas?
Well, one of the most important things for me is ensuring that we can tamp down the rhetoric and the hatefulness that's out there. Like, for example, the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, a key objective is combating racism and hate wherever it might manifest itself. And given all the technology that's out there and given all the social media platforms and the algorithms, etc., truth is almost a casualty of all of that. So I think we need to find a way through technology, and I know it can be done, to fix that problem, because we're all in a lot of trouble if truth is no longer the thing that one focuses on when providing information or disseminating information. So that's one of the key things I'd say keeps me up at night. I think that artificial intelligence can take us in one of two paths. It can take us through the efficiencies it provides and through the information it provides and through the time-saving opportunities that we can gain from AI. It could take us to a much more spiritual place, because AI can allow us to speed up the mundane and speed up all the tasks that otherwise would really suck up a lot of our time from a commoditization point of view, and allow us to live on a higher level and to be seekers on a much higher level. On the other hand, AI can turn us down a different path, which would be extremely disruptive if not used properly and if not prompted in the proper ways.
Yeah, I think we're at a very pivotal time here in terms of where some of this can go, in terms of not only the evolution of these technologies, but as you said, kind of how they are protected or regulated or are contained in some ways. What do you think about the other parts of the areas that you work in, whether it's human rights, whether it's women and the advancement of women, and some of the things that you've done movies on as well related to geopolitical events and things like that? How do you think all of this interplays into what's happening with technology in general, or how we're kind of shaping some of these, whether it's policies or how we kind of think of how this develops and evolves?
Well, the one good thing about the advancement of technology is that it allows for the neutralization of some of the advantages that groups of individuals may have had in terms of getting into the right places and the old boys club and whatnot. Technology democratizes things in a big way if handled properly, so that the phone that we all have at our fingertips, if you're able to develop an app that the consumer wants, it'll find a way into the marketplace. So I think that those sorts of opportunities are at everyone's fingertips if they don't get too discouraged about all the darkness that we see out there today. Like, as the saying goes, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can. And each and every one of us, well-meaning people, can bring light to a lot of the darkness that we see out there if we advocate for proper information, if we highlight injustices out there. Someone in Iran was just executed without due process, accused of things that haven't been proven. And the world needs to know about these kinds of things and well in advance. So if we're able to use technology for good, we can shine a light on some dark situations and eradicate the darkness through the light that we bring. And I think Superworld can play a part in that. As we talked about, Superworld provides a platform that allows any one of us to personalize the real world with context. So as you were saying before, you could create a map, point people towards the Amazon to do your advocacy work. You could put deep areas where there's fighting going on in Ukraine to explain exactly what's happening specifically in those zones. Not everybody can necessarily visit these places physically, although if you could bring the real world by visiting these places physically, that's an added advantage. But you're really, as I see it, trying to bring the digital world to the real world to provide greater content and greater information. But of course, the other aspects of my life, you talk about how can this all plug in, it can allow people to sell their product with greater context, to raise capital with greater context. So Superworld itself allows for any type of functionality that can be brought to real world locations. And I think that's really, really important because I think the more context that people can have, the more accurate information they can have, the greater the opportunity to sort of close the chapter on this post-truth world that we're unfortunately living in very often in this day and age.
Yeah, as we can better understand each other and better understand our perspectives and understand context in a way that's potentially very native to specific locations so we can see what people on the ground are thinking or doing or want to express. I think it definitely brings us closer together as a planet. We don't see those borders or barriers, and we can kind of communicate in a way that allows us to have empathy for what's
Mhm.
happening in places thousands of miles away. So I agree with
The
you.
other the other thing is I love travel, my kids love travel,
Mhm.
and they're
Yeah.
always talking about how it would be really great to sort of be able to diarize or note places that they've been and the most authentic kind of not necessarily expensive, maybe on the contrary, like really authentic places in Greece or whatever where they got the real experience of the food and the culture and whatnot. And I think Superworld could probably provide that kind of added touch and context to people who are passionate about travel.
Yeah, for sure. Cultural recognition as well. We've done a lot of things where those that are in certain parts of the world and want to enable others to get to know their culture and to know ceremonies or events that are happening and be able to interact is, I think, is something else that we're very proud of in terms of how people are using the platform.
Yeah, I'm also working on AI projects
Hmm.
where the AI allows us to detect at any given point in time where the epicenter of hate might be, where the epicenter of misinformation might be in any given point in time.
Hmm.
And knowing how within a split second, depending on the audience you want to reach, how to respond, what nuance to use, what kind of language to use, so that again, we're shedding light on potentially dark area of the net. And again, trying to eradicate this kind of hateful misinformation and negativity that often we're finding way too much online.
Yeah, it's really interesting. How do you think that currently is manifesting as we are looking at deep fakes and the ability to kind of use AI to proliferate content and things like that? I mean, there's a great documentary from the same producers of Social Dilemma. There's the AI Dilemma. I don't know if you've seen that.
Mhm.
Yeah, just curious on how that in your mind is, what are the current dangers of that and how does that get solved?
Well, look, it's a lot of it has to do with funding.
Hmm.
And it has to do with funding from rogue nations from time to time. If you're funding based on a certain agenda, it can have very real world implications. And a lot of people don't even realize what's going on behind the scenes. So I'd say follow the money. And it's not necessarily about combating money with money, but being much more innovative and clever and crafty and scrappy, if you will, through the proper exploitation of the technologies at all of our fingertips right now. That's the good thing. The good news is if you're intelligent enough with the technologies we all have, you can be one person who's overcoming money and the masses that are being infiltrated with hateful information and often false information.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going another direction in terms of your background as well, one of the things that you mentioned is you're very passionate about building world-class teams.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that's going to get us to this next level with technology and all the evolution of the world in general is bringing people together that have those, similar values and can get behind different missions. How do you think about that? What's your kind of advice when you're putting together a team? Because any experienced entrepreneur would say hiring is kind of the number one job that they have. And what's your thought
Absolutely.
on that?
Yeah, I think it's very important to come at very key leadership searches from a first principles point of view. I'm grateful to say I would match my network to anyone's, but you don't want to keep circulating the same old, same old. So on any given project, what I first like to do is understand from my client what are the business objectives underlying your decision to do this CEO search or whatever project it might be. And then I marry a customized research strategy designed to meet the business issues at play. And once I do that, I'm able to uncover what the profile of an individual would ideally look like to take this business forward. And then I identify literally one by one the finite universe of candidates that would best qualify for that role. And if you take that kind of labor intensive approach, you uncover amazing candidates that you may not have otherwise have thought of. And my clients are always telling me how blown away they are by the shortlist that they see and the new faces that they see coming out of that rigorous process. The other thing that comes out of that kind of rigorous process is a very diverse candidate. Back to the work that I do advocating for women in leadership in business, study after study shows that the greater the diversity around the boardroom table, the greater the business results. So beyond the moral imperative, which is the most important, but maybe not every business person cares about the moral imperative, there's a business case to be had for a diverse leadership slate, a diverse board. And that's one of the things we really emphasize on each and every project that we take on, and we feel it works really, really well.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds like you're able to bring in candidates that have this kind of different take on the situation potentially and may not be the typical candidate that is shown to a CEO, but can maybe take the business in a whole new direction that wasn't previously kind of
That's right.
explored.
Yeah. I was just
Yeah.
telling someone an
Yeah.
example of that. A
Mhm.
bank client came to me and they said, we've been struggling to do something different from a marketing standpoint. Been using all the big recruiting firms, and we're trying to find a marketing professional who will really go beyond what our competitors are doing. And the question I asked was, well, where are you getting these clients, what candidates from? And they said, well, from the other banks. So I said, well, if you want to do something different, you can't be looking at your competitors for these kinds of candidates. I said, if you think about it from a marketing standpoint, you're focusing on the everyday consumer. So that means it's your retail operation that's the key. You
Mhm.
need a marketing leader who will understand retail because essentially that's what you're targeting. You're targeting the average retail consumer of your banking services.
Mhm.
So I said, why not look at the gap? Why not look at traditional retailers who've historically been way ahead of you from a marketing standpoint? You have thousands and thousands of people who understand banking. Just get
Mhm.
a good retail marketing person. So they went along with it and they ended up hiring someone from one of the big retailers.
Hmm.
And they tell me that it's the best hire they ever made, and they really ended up way ahead of their competitors in that regard. So it's about thinking a little bit more strategically about all these things. It's not just about placing bums in seats and taking orders at our level.
Yeah. I mean, that's very interesting. I think it
Yeah.
comes from your background of being so multifaceted. You're able to
Mhm.
kind of think across different industries and niches and see where people can add value. Very interesting. I'd love to jump into some of the stuff you're doing as well as an artist. You mentioned you're producing movies as well as your work on the music side as well.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I love the artistic part of life. I think Winston Churchill said when they were talking about cutting funding for the arts during the war, he said, well, if we do that, what are we fighting for in the first place? So, art is at the heart of everything in my view. And yeah, I was an executive producer of Sean Penn's film Superpower, which was nominated for me. I'm an associate producer on a sci-fi series called Razor, really about the future of AI and implanting AI into people's brains and all that kind of stuff. Really cool kind of thriller type of series. I'm on the board of a film fund called Partners in Kind, the board of advisors, and we fund films that have impact. Not only films, also we're working on a Broadway show about Maya Angelou, which is really cool. I enjoy writing music. If you check out my name on Apple Music or Spotify, you'll see some songs of mine as well. And I'm currently covert basis, I can't tell you too much, writing a song with an Academy Award and Grammy Award winner, a song from Mother Nature to her children, which I think is pretty powerful. And I've been involved on the business side as well of music. It's just an area of real passion of mine, and also at the intersection of music and impact, just like film and impact. So I love that aspect of my life as well.
Was that always something that you've been involved in as an artist, as a creator? How did you get into some of these industries? Because I'm sure there's must have been some kind of learning and evolution there. How did it start?
Well, I always loved the arts. We had a piano in my house from a very, very young age. When I was 5 years old, I asked my mom if I could take piano lessons. She was really surprised. She's like, yeah, I was planning when you're around 7 or 8, but if you want to take them now, then go ahead. So I took to music really quickly and really early and found my way through, music was really at the leading edge of digital early on. So the intersection of investing and advising and being at the leading edge of business, etc., led me naturally to digital early on. And then, of course, music was, as I say, really one of the pioneering industries in the digital space. And I always had a passion for film as well. Through the work I do in human rights, I found my way to Ukraine with Sean Penn's co-director on this film they were doing called Superpower. It's really a character study of Zelensky as he evolved as a leader in the Russian invasion. And through some of my work with them, they were kind enough to give me an executive producer role in that. The Razor piece is through some of the technology consulting work that I was doing. NFT world and the Web3 world of the early 2020s got me into that space a little bit with a dear friend who's also an actor. So it all kind of happened organically, including the Film Fund Partners in Kind. I was helping the founder, who's an amazing woman herself. Her name is Shelley Tagilsky. She built an organization called Partners in Kind Mutual Aid for those in need during the pandemic. She raised well over $100 million for those in need during the pandemic, and it's ongoing work. And she was made a CNN hero, and she thought, hey, why not do a series about the work that I've been doing through Pandemic of Love? And that led to a big investment through a partner of hers. And before we knew it, she invited me to join that advisory board as well. So a lot of what happens to me is organic. I try not to push things. Like I just naturally find myself involved in certain opportunities, and I see certain opportunities. And one of my philosophies in life is, if you see a crack in a door and an opportunity to open that door and walk through it, then do it. Because what's the upside to not walking through that door to see what's on the other side? So while I don't push things, I see opportunities, and I'm very laser focused on being aware of opportunities when they're presenting themselves to me. And it leads me to all kinds of interesting places.
That's awesome. That's a great philosophy to live by. It always keeps you curious and brave to go through new doors and to experience things. So I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, as a final question, I'd love to ask you about the future. We're going, we started this conversation about how we're going through interesting times now and across a variety of fronts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where do you think the biggest opportunities are to improve our society, to improve business, to improve some of the other themes that you've spoken about with human rights and women and other things that you're so passionate about. Would love to hear your thoughts on what is the optimistic opportunity here in front of us as it brings together all of those things that you're passionate about.
Well, as many of my spiritual friends would say, one cannot find peace in the world unless one is at peace with oneself. So I think we're at a point where we have an opportunity, given the technology that is advancing at a really fast rate. First of all, we need all hands on deck. to take artificial intelligence at this fork in the road into the most positive place possible, creating efficiencies. We have enough food in the world right now to feed 20 billion people, and we're only 8 billion people. There's no reason why anyone should go hungry. We need to use the technologies at our fingertips to create greater efficiencies in our lives, free more time up from the mundane. And once we do that, we have an opportunity, all of us, to focus on the spiritual now that all the mundane can be taken care of by itself. And as I say, every single individual on this planet should be fed properly. And then we need to work on our own wellness, being joyful by our very nature, not accidentally because someone said something nice to us, and not be unhappy because someone said something not nice to us, and not being happy because the stock market's up and then tomorrow the stock market's down. We need to understand that life is a thriller movie with ups and downs. It's a roller coaster. It's with waves that go up and waves that go down. We need to learn how to surf those waves joyfully and with excitement rather than getting swallowed up with them. And if each and every one of us works on our own inner engineering and understands the importance of not pursuing happiness, but being happy by your own very nature, then who would want to hurt another brother or sister on the world when they're joyful? So rather than think of people as being good and bad, think of people being joyful and miserable. And if we can all tip the scale to joy, no one would ever want to hurt the other person in the world.
I think that's so important. I think I've read Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle about 20 times. I think that is so important, the spirituality. And I think the world is going to be going in this direction, as you said, once we've kind of solved these other problems, which hopefully technology is going to do. It's been a really awesome conversation today. I'm really happy we got to share more of what you're doing and how you're passionately building here. And again, we really appreciate everything that you're doing for all of the facets of the ways that you're making the world a better place. So thanks again for being here today. Where can people learn about your work and find you online to learn more about what you're working on?
You can find me on Instagram, Rosenzweig_company. You can find me easily on LinkedIn, all the social media. My personal website probably gives you the most information in one place. It's just my name.com. So Rosenzweig.com. If you Google my name, you'll probably find a whole bunch of stuff, and certainly happy to engage with anybody in your audience or any friends or anyone in your network.
Thanks again, Jay. Pleasure to have you on and looking forward to following your journey more. Thanks again.
Thank you. Talk soon. Take care.
What an incredible session. It's been such a privilege to sit down with some of the brightest minds and come together to explore how we can build a more meaningful, abundant future using the tools of emerging tech, from spatial computing and blockchain to AI and real-world assets. This summit has been a powerful reminder of what's possible when purpose and innovation meet.